This is the Cancer Interviews podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Bruce Morton. Our guest on this episode survived stage 4 lung cancer. In so doing, she learned that a lung cancer journey is not just physical in nature, but has a mental and emotional component, and there is a stigma that wrongfully applies to the diagnosis. She is Marcel D'Allende of Cape Town, South Africa. Now let's hear her story. And Marcel, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Thank you.
And we want to start off the way we always do, and that's to learn more about you, your life away from cancer. So if you would, tell us a bit about where you're from, what you've done for work, and what you like to do for fun.
Okay. So I used to work in the corporate environment as a IT consultant most of my adult career. And I got a bit tired of that. And then I decided to become a life coach, consciousness coach. I had my own company established. I did that for about 7 years, mostly empowering women to become the greatest version of themselves. And then I went back into the corporate space as a change and transformation manager. And so currently I'm still doing change management, but there's also an aspect of life coaching still within the change management frame. What do I like to do? Oh, just be in nature. I am a nature girl. I love hiking. I've done the big ones like Kilimanjaro, the Inca Trail, the Everest Base Camp. And so I'm literally every weekend, everybody knows, find me on the mountain. That's where I'm at my happiest.
So it sounds like it's safe to say prior to your diagnosis, you were in pretty good health.
Very good health, extremely good health. Yeah.
Now, for all of us diagnosed with cancer, there was that point in time in which we noticed something not quite right about our health, and that's what eventually led to our diagnosis. For you, when did you notice something was abnormal?
So I was preparing for a 4-day hike that I was going to do early December, and there were 3 friends and I were doing this hike. And we were doing quite a bit of training because it was quite strenuous, 80 kilometers over 4 days. And so, again, like I said, typically I would be on the mountain every week anyway, but it would be shorter hikes, I guess. And we started doing longer, more endurance type of hiking. And I would say towards the latter part, about October, I had real difficulty breathing as I would ascend the mountain. And for the first time in my life, at the end of October, beginning November in 21, I could not complete a hike. I actually had to turn around. And that for me was something huge. So the breathing just became more belabored, lots of coughing. So it started off with slow coughing, intermittently, and then it just became worse. I would literally just be sitting doing absolutely nothing, and I would have a coughing fit. And that's when I knew that something was really awry. I went to my doctor, my GP actually. And my GP sent me for an X-ray. And when she saw the results, she suggested that I rather go and see a pulmonologist. I said that can wait until I come back from my hike because nothing was going to interfere with my hike. And so when I got back from the hike, that's what I did, had an appointment with the pulmonologist. He had a look at the X-rays, and then he recommended doing a CT scan because I guess he had his suspicions. He saw something on the X-rays, and then after the CT scan, that's when he confirmed that there's definitely something on the lung, and he then diagnosed me with non-small cell lung cancer.
Now, for all of us, when we are diagnosed with cancer, it's quite obvious that it's a terrible day, a singular day in our lives, but there are all sorts of variables between different people and different diagnoses. For you, when you take into account all the variables in your equation, how did you handle it?
So initially, I think before, with the build up to it, I kind of had my suspicion that it was going to be the C word. And that was just because it was nothing that I've ever experienced before. Like I say, the fitness level was there and everything else, and I'm pretty much a healthy eater and all of the stuff. When he told me the news, I was like, okay. My world shattered in a little bit of a moment there. And I think that was based on the fact that my father had died of lung cancer in 2020, sorry, in 2000. So I had firsthand experienced what his end looked like. So it was that actually came back to me in that moment, and that was where my world shattered, and I was like, I just had this memory of him, and I thought, this is going to be my life now.
So you've been diagnosed with lung cancer, and as we mentioned briefly at the top, and is mentioned virtually any time for anybody on a lung cancer journey, as if that isn't bad enough, there's a stigma that is attached to lung cancer. Did you find yourself ever encountering that stigma?
So actually, the first stigma was me against myself, because I was a smoker off and on in my adult life. And so after the whole image of my dad, the first thing that came to mind for me is, you deserve it. You smoked. So this is the result of it. So that was the first judgment that I actually experienced, was my judgment against myself. Then obviously engaging other people and sharing the news. Definitely there was judgment. Some people to the point as in, oh my God, you should never have smoked. And I mean, it's the last thing you want to hear, right? You've just been diagnosed. So yeah, there's definitely stigma around, and it is also, educating people. I have subsequently learned that, 20% of lung cancer patients has never smoked in their life. I lost a very close friend who was a colleague first, and she was diagnosed in June of 21. I was diagnosed in December of 21, and she's never smoked in her life, and she passed in I think it was in August of 22.
By the way, we hope you'll find time to like and subscribe to our channel. If you click on the bell icon, you'll be notified anytime we post a new interview. And we want to remind you that on Cancer Interviews, we are not distributors of medical advice. If you or a loved one seek medical advice, please consult a licensed healthcare professional. So, Marcel, you've been diagnosed. You've run into this stigma that is something that visits just about everybody diagnosed with lung cancer. And yet you have said you were determined not to be defined by your cancer. If you would, please elaborate.
Yeah, so again, I have to keep referring back to my father, because, and so the first thing that happened for me is when I met my oncologist, the first thing that my oncologist said is, this is the story of your dad. It doesn't have to be your story, because in 20 years, things obviously have progressed, technology, medicines, everything. So it doesn't have to be your story. When she said that, it just literally landed for me, as in, okay, so I'm still the person that I was before I was diagnosed. And with that, I mean, I'm still a wife. I'm still a mother to my two babies, who are two furry dogs. And with knowing all of that, I still have dreams. I still have aspirations for myself. And all of that still exists. And so then it was, for me personally, I had to see myself beyond the diagnosis first. And then what happened then was I then had to educate people around me to see me beyond the cancer, to remind them of the passionate person I am, the adventure seeker I am, the good friend, the good sister, whatever that role is that they played in my life, or I played in their life. It was literally educating them to see beyond that as well. And some people could not see beyond that because of whatever's happening in their life, and they wanted to rather just, concentrate on the drama of the journey. And that is something which I think is very important, is that if that happens, and if that's the choice that you have, I got rid of that. I said, you know what, for right now, there's no space in your life if you can't see me beyond this. So I was very clear about this, that I'm so much more than this diagnosis, and it was important for my journey.
And what about the H word? How important is the word hope in this entire equation?
Very important, very important. I'm not talking about being delusional. I'm talking about being hopeful. So, and I think there's a very fine line between the two, and we have to be very careful how we trade that. So I think I was very fortunate that I was able to lean on my life coaching tools. So what I mean with that is that I know for a fact that every emotion is temporary. It doesn't last forever. Unless we feed it, it will last forever. So that means that anxiety can still exist, and I give presence to it. I allow the anxiety to be there, but I don't make a holiday in the anxiety. So I allowed every single emotion that needed to surface. I allow it to be there. I acknowledge it. And then I move forward from it. Then I focus on something positive, as in what a beautiful day we have, the sunshine. Today I'm able to walk 200 meters as opposed to yesterday I couldn't get out of bed. So those are little wins. And those little wins, when you start looking at them, they are the little things that gives you hope.
Now let's get to your treatment regimen. It was lengthy, and the first part of it, I guess, was radiotherapy. If you would describe what you went through with respect to radiotherapy.
Yes, so I was diagnosed in December 21, and because in Cape Town, everything shuts down in December. It is our festive period, and it's summer, so everybody is having parties and everything. So pretty much we're all used to it. So I started my radiotherapy in January, I would say mid-January of 2022. And what that was like is 30 sessions over 6 weeks. So I had to daily go in Monday through Friday and it was 15 to 20 minutes of radiotherapy. I honestly don't think that my body felt it that much. I didn't have the major fatigue that everybody spoke about that they experienced. So I think for me, the easy part was the radiotherapy. Yeah.
Okay, well, it was followed by chemotherapy, which is never easy. If you would describe your chemotherapy regimen.
So that was a transfusion, and it was also 6 cycles of chemotherapy, which started in February of 22. And I would have to go in every second week, or maybe even every 10 days, depending. And that would then be a transfusion for an hour and a half, but then, of course, setup time and everything else and recovery time, they give you half an hour. So pretty much half your day is gone. What I was fortunate enough with is that I don't know what it's like in the US, but in South Africa, especially the hospital that I was in, they kind of try to schedule you with the same group of people. So we kind of had established relationships. So instead of dreading going for chemotherapy, you were looking forward to it because you were going to be seeing these people who were walking alongside you in this journey and catching up on how things are for them, etc. So I would say that, I would try to walk in there with a positive attitude and, just keep uplifting everybody. But that's not just me, everyone else trying to do the same. When somebody wasn't having a good day, we would huddle around like sisters and, just make sure that that person is getting through that chapter. So from a transfusion perspective, it wasn't bad. Now, the side effects of it, I must admit, the first and the second session was almost like a non-event for me. I was able to come home and, yes, I was tired. I had a couple of hours sleep, but that was it. And I was like, wow, if this is going to be it, then this is not as bad as people are making it out to be. Wow. It kicked my bunny by the third session. So then I started getting the actual side effects, which was mostly the nausea, even though I was on anti-nausea medication. And yeah, the normal stuff as in I was very sensitive to sound. I don't know why that was. That was also one of the side effects. So I would literally come home and just get into bed, not even have the dogs with me in bed, which would be unusual, just in case they bark because it would sound so bad. And just allow myself that time to rest. And typically my chemotherapy was scheduled on a Thursday, which means that I would be maybe in bed for the Thursday, Friday, and then start surfacing on the Saturday.
And in terms of your chemotherapy regimen, what type of medications were you on?
So the chemotherapy itself was a combination of, I think, carboplatin and pemetrexed. And that's typically what they use for non-small cell lung cancer as the regimen for the first treatment. And I was told that it was quite successful. And again, because the side effects were not as extreme as other chemotherapies, I was deemed a good candidate because of how my body reacted to it.
Okay, and after the chemotherapy, you also went through immunotherapy, and if you would describe what that entailed.
So obviously there's scans and everything that's happening in this period between January and March, April. All the times they're checking to see, whether it's working or not working. And the combination of the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy, they could see it was definitely diminishing the tumor in the lung, and they felt very positive. So my oncologist was introduced me to the concept of immunotherapy instead of continuing chemotherapy at a later stage. And so she had found this drug which was not available in South Africa yet because it was still seen as a test trial. But I think while she was making, in fact, I know while she was making inquiries, they had just received FDA approval. So I was actually one of the first in South Africa who was able to get this drug via our medical insurance, and this drug was called durvalumab. And it was rated highly successful. We looked at the stats and everything, and so that again became a transfusion. and I had to go into the chemotherapy lab again and go through the transfusion. I was on this for a period of 9 months. Typically, you would stay on it for a period of 12 months. Unfortunately, I had to stop the immunotherapy because I had what they think could be a side effect. I started getting almost like small spots on the lung. And but I must say, the immunotherapy, there were no side effects that I could really talk about. It was not the same as the chemotherapy. I would go in for my transfusion, I would come home, and I'd go about my day. So that was definitely easier for my body to handle than the actual chemotherapy. And we had a PET scan in December of 22. And at that point, they literally gave me the all clear. There was no active cancer cells in my body. So we had deemed this a huge success, the systemic treatment of the radiotherapy, the chemotherapy, and then adding on the immunotherapy.
What was it like when you determined that with all this treatment, these multiple phases, what was it like when it looked like you were trending towards survivorship?
Oh, it was great. It was absolutely awesome. But I will say, Bruce, I had a very different attitude, right? I wasn't waiting from one scan to the next scan to see what my life was going to look like. I think one of the biggest things for me was, how do I make the most of this day? Right? And so how much life do I get to live in this day? So I wasn't always waiting, and I honestly can say before your PET scan or your CT scan gets scheduled, of course, the anxiety steps in and you start questioning whether it worked, whether it didn't work. But I do listen to my body, and my body felt solid. It felt good. No, I couldn't scale the high mountains just yet, but I felt solid again. I felt like I was me again. So I kind of felt that it was working. I wasn't pushing for the scans or anything. I literally just wanted to live my life. And so there was no waiting to hear what that result of the PET scan was going to be. I was just continuing with my life.
As for the here and now, can you resume your active lifestyle?
Oh, I'm back in the mountains. Absolutely. I'm actually planning a hike in Portugal next year. So in May next year. So I'm busy training right now.
So you can go more than 200 meters.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, during this journey, anybody on a cancer journey needs support, and one external source of support for you was the Cancer Association of South Africa, or CANSA for short. What has CANSA done for you, and what can CANSA do for others?
So CANSA is an amazing organization, as in they are able to help people with, the just being diagnosed, help them walk through their journey, what that's going to look like. They have support groups, whether that is face-to-face support groups, whether that is regional support groups. They have a varied amount of information and resources available to people. Where I tapped in was more on the nutrition side. So I reached out and I was able to get a one-on-one with a nutritionist who is aligned with CANSA. And because one thing I knew is that the nutrients in my body is going to have to be like medicine. And I wanted somebody to guide me through that journey. And she did an absolutely amazing job with guiding me through, as in what that's going to look like. Sometimes you're not going to be able to eat. You literally can't get anything down. But then how do you get a punch of nutrients in your body just with a couple of teaspoons of soup or whatever. So that was really the part that I tapped into cancer. But I've also been doing quite a bit with cancer since my journey as well. And they are just doing fabulous work with checks that they help, that you can just walk into any of the centers and you can go and have yourself checked for breast lumps or anything like that. So just a phenomenal organization and very, very helpful within South Africa.
And part of that overall presentation for cancer is its vast website. Do you know their web address?
Yes, so it is www.cancer.org.za.
All right, Marcel, we're going to wrap up now, but before we conclude, I want you to put on your coach hat. And if you ran into somebody who had just been diagnosed with lung cancer or any other type of cancer, you might have a great deal of advice to impart to them. But if there's one thing that you would want to make sure that was a takeaway that they would be sure to remember, what would it be?
Define your boundaries. So I think that's really, really important because your energy is extremely important to you. So you need to define your boundaries. Excellent. So that you conserve your energy.
Excellent. Marcel D'Allende, Cape Town, South Africa, thanks so much for a great story, an inspiring story, and a wealth of information, something that anybody on a cancer journey should remember when they try to approach that diagnosis. So, Marcel, thanks so much for being with us on Cancer Interviews.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we want to remind you, as we always do when we conclude, that if you or a loved one are on a cancer journey, you are not alone. There are people out there like Marcel. There are organizations like Cancer that are there to help. So until next time, we'll see you on Down the Road.